According to reports and statistics, in South Africa, three-quarters of the freeholder arable land is possessed by white South Africans, while the same freeholder arable land is possessed by 4% of black people. But here's the interesting thing. In South Africa, 80% of the population of South Africa is black, while 8% of the same population is white, and the other races constitute the other remaining percentages. Now you'll be asking, what's the statistics for? Well, we're going to find out. Welcome, I'm Virtue Grace, the African Storyteller. If you're coming by for the first time, you're welcome as well. Have you subscribed? No, right? Click on that subscribe button, all right? When you do, turn on the bell for notifications. Thank you. Now let's go in. I just shared the statistics with you to form a backdrop for our conversation today because it's interesting. All right. Recently, the South African government signed a bill to provide legal grounds on which to expropriate land legitimately with adequate compensation. Now, I know that's big grammar. What that basically means is recently the government of South Africa signed a bill that will give the government the powers to be able to take back land from certain people and reuse it for the collective good of South Africa and South Africans. But this information or bill was misconstrued, all right, by certain powers, and they decided to launch, some attacks in different ways. The United States inaugurated a new administration led by President Donald Trump, and in the wake of this new US administration, some reforms or policy changes have been going on, one of which I brought you recently on the US government's policy change on providing HIV/AIDS intervention aid to Africa. All right, if you've not seen that video, it's linked somewhere here or in the description box. Click to watch. All right, South Africa, being an African country, was not exempt from this policy change. Nigeria was also affected, several other countries. I think it was only 2 countries in Africa that were exempted from the policy change by the US government. Still in line with the policy changes and sanctions and all, the US president allegedly accused South African government of forcibly taking land from certain group of people, illegitimately and without recourse to justice, which the South African government has responded to as untrue. Yes, the South African government signed a bill to expropriate land, but that, according to the government and according to the bill, will be done legitimately, and adequate compensations will be issued based on agreement with the government and the landowners. Now, that goes back to the statistics I shared at the beginning of the video, that 3/4 of freeholder arable land in South Africa is owned by white South Africans, against 4% ownership by black South Africans, even though black South Africans constitute 80% of the country's population. Now, this is clearly a case of land ownership parity that the bill seeks to address also. This land ownership parity can be explained against the backdrop of the several colonial invasions that happened in South Africa and, the subsequent apartheid regime. But since then, land that was forcibly taken from indigenous black South Africans has remained in the hands of the minority white South Africans till today. And we all know that land is wealth. When you own land, you own the majority of the means of production. At least from my basic knowledge of economics in secondary school, land is an invaluable asset of production. So when you own land, whoever owns the land controls the wealth. All right, you can use your land to engage in several different types of production, of wealth creation, and enrich yourself and contribute to the economy of your nation, your community, wherever you are. So now you understand why land ownership is important. And this huge disparity in land ownership in South Africa, honestly, really, it's high time it was addressed. And the government has taken this step to address this land ownership parity in the interest of South Africa and South Africans. But this clearly did not sit well with, I would say, Donald Trump, the president of the US, because he is the one leading the administration and he's the one who has allegedly accused South Africa of forcibly taking land from a certain group of people who clearly, based on statistics, are white and, without recourse to justice, which clearly is not the case anyway. So the government of South Africa, urged the government of US to carry out the investigation, because the US government said they are going to investigate the matter until a satisfactory conclusion is reached before they would reverse any decisions they've taken in terms of cutting aid to South Africa. So the South African government said, well, go on, do your investigation, and hopefully you come to a conclusion that helps you understand that South Africa is a democratically sovereign nation that makes policies and decisions that are legitimate and in the best interest of the people of South Africa and South Africa as a country. The president of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, also responded, because the US said they are cutting aid support to South Africa for HIV interventions. The South African president said, well, only 17% of the HIV intervention in South Africa is sponsored or funded by the US. All right, so that to me seems like it's quite insignificant. So we are well capable of handling our affairs. And this also, I think, is not far-fetched from the fact that South Africa has had a cordial relationship with Russia, with China, who are not necessarily good friends of the US. Also, in the wake of the Israel-Palestinian war, South Africa took a strong stand against Israel. And that also did not go well with the US, because the US and Israel are strong allies. So you see now that the bilateral relationship between South Africa and the US has been constrained already. So making these accusations that are not really based on fact and using it as a basis to cut funding to South Africa or to impose any sanctions and all of that on South Africa, for me, is just like trying to find something to punish your enemy's friend. South Africa is a foreign nation that has the right to lead itself, its people, make policies, make laws that benefit it as a government and as a people. So they should be allowed to do that without recourse to any foreign sanctions or scrutiny. And did I mention that the South African president also said they are open to discussing their policy with the US to foster better understanding of their policy? And I'm like, why should you even have to do that? You are a sovereign nation. The US does not consult you to make their policies. All right, so why should you have to sit down to discuss with the US your policies in order to foster understanding, especially when they take decisions arbitrarily before consulting you to understand better any wrongdoings with your policies or your laws? That's not a balanced relationship, if you ask me. And South Africa is a sovereign nation, like I said. It's not answerable to any other nation. I believe that this law is a welcome development, as it's going to help the government address this land ownership parity and foster more equity, because all South Africans are equal. None should be or is more equal than the other. So land ownership should also be addressed equally, if you ask me. That's my opinion. Now, before we continue, give the video a thumb up and share, all right? And drop your comment. Let me know what you think so far. Then in terms of HIV funding and interventions, like I said in my previous video, I believe that African governments should rise to the occasion. It is high time we rose up and took our destiny in our hands. Enough of depending on foreign aid. So if someone wakes up and decides, I'm no longer supporting you, then we should take responsibility. And I believe the government of South Africa has been doing that, and they will also continue to do that. Even devise more means of funding for HIV interventions in South Africa, and even start producing the antiretrovirals and other HIV intervention supplies that are needed. Let's wake up. Let's rise to the occasion. I think this is a wake-up call for us as a continent. Last but not the least, South Africans, put yourself first. If America is putting America first, then it's only right that South Africa puts South Africa first. It's only right that Nigeria puts Nigeria first. It's only right that every other nation puts their own nation first. No wrongdoing in that. All right, that's basically my opinion. What do you guys think? Drop a comment, let me know. And if you've not subscribed, subscribe, turn on notifications, and definitely share this video. All right, I'll see you in my next video. Until then, stay safe, healthy, be law abiding. I'm Virtue Grace, the African Storyteller. Bye. Wow.